Grade 12 learners, as we were starting with the Black Consciousness Movement, we are continuing with Black Consciousness Movement. I want to show you how to answer an essay on Black Consciousness Movement. Because in history, we are doing argumentative essay. An argumentative essay is an essay that is different from a narrative essay. A narrative essay is an essay where a learner is reproducing what he was taught. Whereas an argumentative essay is an essay that has got a stance, a line of argument, where you, as a learner, you must also put in your views as to how do you view this statement. Now, when you are writing an essay, first thing that you need to do is to write an introduction. And an introduction must be contextualized. The structure of an essay is whereby there is an introduction with a line of argument, reasons for taking a stance, orientation, that is historical evidence that is going to be used to support the line of argument. A body should be a series of paragraphs following Peel method and line of argument. A conclusion is contextualized when it has got a line of argument. Now, argumentative essays are asked in different ways. For instance, as I'm giving you this example, which says it was through the influence of the Black Consciousness Movement that Black South Africans were able to stand up against the apartheid government in the 1980s. Critically discuss this statement. Use relevant historical evidence to support your line of argument. Firstly, this essay can be asked in three different ways. The question can be, do you agree with this statement? Then once you agree, it means you are going to support it right through, from introduction to conclusion. To what extent? Then to what extent means that then if this statement, for instance, you feel that it's an authentic statement, but then to what extent, that should be your line of argument. Critically discuss is the most higher grade question, because with that one, you must focus on two aspects, successes and failures. Look at both sides. Look at both. Now you will be looking at the strength of the Black Consciousness Movement and the weaknesses of the Black Consciousness Movement. So this essay, you must know that you are going to look at both strengths and weaknesses. An introduction is contextualized if it has got a stance, that is a line of argument, and there must be reasons for taking a stance. If an introduction doesn't have reasons, it's just useless. You will not be credited for it. And again, if it does not have a stance, you will also be penalized. Orientation means that show us the historical evidence that is going to be used to support your line of argument. For instance, in this case, the historical evidence that is going to be used to support the line of argument. One, when you are discussing this essay, you must firstly explain the philosophy of the Black Consciousness Movement and the aims of Black Consciousness Movement. You must explain NUSAS, the role played by NUSAS, SASO, Black People's Convention, self-help projects, Black Allied Workers Union, ZASIM, banning of Black Consciousness leaders, Viva Frelimo, Soweto uprising, arrest and death of Steve Biko. Then once you start with the banning of liberation movements in 1960, then that one is a background, it does not give you marks. Then, in this case, Peel method. I want to show you how to write an essay using Peel method. For instance, in this essay, if you are discussing the philosophy and the aims of Black Consciousness Movement, you must explain the philosophy, give evidence, then link it to the line of argument. In this case, after you have explained it, now when you link it, it means you are applying the line of argument, you are analyzing. By doing so, this indicates that the philosophy of Black Consciousness on its own influenced the Black South Africans to stand up against apartheid government, because after Black people heard about this philosophy, they started to be proud of themselves. And they began to undermine and rejected apartheid rules, hence challenging the apartheid regime. However, apartheid regime was always able to crush any resistance of the black people. That is what is called line of argument. Now I have analyzed it. In this case, if the learner in this paragraph is discussing the role played by NUSAS in making blacks able to stand up against the government, we must link it to the question. You must be able to say, this indicates that NUSAS did not instill pride among black students, and it did not influence the black South Africans to stand up against apartheid government, because black students were treated as second-class citizens in NUSAS, and they were undermined. As a result, Steve Biko and Pani Pichana decided to leave NUSAS to form SASO, which will be able to challenge the regime. So that is how to link the line of argument. In this paragraph, if the learner is explaining the role played by SASO in making blacks able to stand up against the government, he must be able to link it to the question by saying, in SASO, the idea of self-reliance was fulfilled, and it was an organization that was formed by black students for black students to challenge apartheid regime. But SASO was regarded as a racial organization because it excluded white students. Its activities were meant to challenge apartheid. So that is an analysis. Now I'm focusing on how to sustain the line of argument. In this case, the learner is discussing the aims of SASO. Fine, that one is content. But what is important is that L of Peel method. By doing so, SASO instilled pride among black people, and it also influenced black South Africans to stand up against apartheid, because SASO made black students to be politically and socially active. It encouraged students to liberate themselves from apartheid government. It promoted black unity and solidarity. It ended up as a powerful united front against the apartheid governments. Hence, it united black students against apartheid and also united black people against apartheid. The apartheid government made all attempts to suppress SASO. So, grade 12 learners, please note what is important when you are writing an argumentative essay is to link your answer to the question. Stance is very important. That's line of argument. Failing which, your essay will be just a narrative essay and it won't give you much more marks. In this case, in this paragraph, the learner is discussing the role of Black People's Convention. During the 1970s, there were many organizations. Fine, you explain it, but I want to see you if you are able to link that to the question. This indicates that black people were determined to stand up against apartheid government. So our focus here is to link to the question. If, for instance, we talk about the aims of Black People's Convention, if the Black People's Convention threatened the apartheid government, when we were looking at the black community projects, self-help projects, what matters most there is to state categorically that by doing these projects instilled pride among black people and influenced black South Africans to stand up against apartheid government, because these projects promoted self-reliance among black people, and black people were helping each other. They were no longer begging for white people. Hence, this challenged the apartheid government. However, it was difficult to get funding for these projects. That is how to argue. That is how to argue. I'm critically arguing this statement. Look at both sides of the statement, because that's how an argumentative should be. Now, if Black consciousness movement was able to revive the trade unions in South Africa. Now, the revival of trade unionism was very significant because government responded by passing the Labor Relations Act now in 1979. This act was significant because black workers could form their registered trade unions. The revival of trade unionism was significant because it influenced black workers to stand up against the apartheid government, because it united black workers against apartheid and instilled confidence amongst the black workers, hence posing a challenge to the apartheid government. Black Allied Workers Union made the country ungovernable because of strikes. Now, which means that trade unionism was able to make people stand against the government. So that is how to critically discuss an essay. If you look at the reactions of the apartheid government to the challenge that was posed by BC, the apartheid government reacted by banning PCM leader like Okgopotso Tiro and Mampela Rampela. Steve Biko and Pani Pityana were also detained under Terrorism Act. Even SASO was banned on university campuses. Now, in this essay, you must also allude on Frelimo rallies, the role played by Frelimo rallies in strengthening black South Africans so that they can be able to stand against apartheid government. Now, the Viva Frelimo rallies influenced black South Africans to stand up for themselves against apartheid because these rallies brought hope to South Africans that one day they would gain their independence. This became a challenge to apartheid. So always look back to what the essay was before you answer. Now, coming to the role played by the 1976 Soweto uprising in making black South Africans able to stand up against the apartheid. Well, here you must be able to talk about the role played by ZASIM, the role played by Africans, the role played by Bantu education. Then you talk about the June 16. And when you must also allude on police brutality, which led to the death of Hector Peterson and Hastings Ndlovu. But then link it to the question, you're discussing this narratively, then argue it. They used stones and petrol bombs, fine. This proved that black consciousness movement made people to challenge apartheid government because the inferiority complex was removed by black consciousness. So if black consciousness, by the way, the statement is valid because this shows us that PCM made people to do away with the inferiority complex. Now, then, when again you look at the arrest and the death of Steve Biko, it says in August 1977, Steve Biko violated his banning order by making a trip to Cape Town to meet with members of other liberation movements. So this is about the death of Steve Biko. But looking at the death of Steve Biko, it doesn't end there. You must also show us that the death of Steve Biko also made people to be able to stand up against apartheid government, because when Steve Biko was arrested and killed, people became more eager to continue with the struggle until South Africa becomes emancipated from the shackles of oppression. PCM activists, for instance, if you look at it, the legacy of black consciousness, PCM activists, like they formed ASAPO because they wanted to keep the aspirations of Steve Biko alive. And again, when you look at the legacy of PCM, the legacy of Steve Biko inspired the formation of Steve Biko Foundation in 1998. If you go to Ginsberg, you will find Steve Biko Foundation. There is also Steve Biko Center, which was built in Ginsberg to commemorate Steve Biko. So basically, Steve Biko's aspirations are still alive. Steve Biko is still able to make people able to fight against apartheid. His spirit is still alive, though he is no longer alive, but his spirit is still alive. Hence, he once said, it is better to die for something that will live than to live for something that will die. Hence, even today, people are still living by Steve Biko's aspirations. In conclusion, now, when learners, grade 12 learners, please, when you are concluding, use concluding remarks. This is the last paragraph. In this last paragraph, use concluding remarks. Say, in conclusion, it is clear, therefore, that it was through the influence of the PCM that black South Africans were able to stand up against government in the 1970s. Or you must say, to conclude. Or you must say, in my final analysis, in a nutshell, conclusively, to sum up. So that is how to write a conclusion when you are writing. Step number 2, in your conclusion, restate the line of argument. The line of argument that you took in your introduction must be the same as the line of argument that you're going to use in your conclusion. And again, step number 3, give reasons for taking your stance. So a conclusion is not as big as like introduction, because here you're using concluding remarks and you restate the line of argument. Do not write new points in your conclusion. Just turn introduction into conclusion. I thank you very much, and I wish you the best in your exams. When you are writing paper 2, I will be behind you. Please do it for yourselves, do it for your parents, do it for the Department of Education, do it for your teachers. History has never been a failing subject. Please start with essays, and source-based questions should be the last one. Start with essays. Relax when you are going to write essays so that you don't have fatigue in the paper. Just prepare yourselves. I wish you all the best. Mr. Machikija, the subject advisor of OR Tambo Inland District. My number is 0738 139 186. Thank you very much.